I thought it was just going to be research and a way to connect with my roots. And, I started writing some papers on what it would mean to create, or I guess recreate, this category of contraceptives for women and people all over the world who may have that unmet need or not really resonate with what's currently available on the market. So the more I researched, the more I gave some talks. I had people come up to me and really, they opened up and they shared their stories about how they can't use what's on the market, or they don't, like what's on the market. And let me know when you're doing clinical studies. So that's when it pivoted to it just being research to actually thinking that this could be a reality again.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. I love the story in today's episode. And my first conversations with the guest was just amazing how her passion had aligned with her grandfather's passion, actually, who developed a medical device. And she had come across the medical device and his research in the basement of his old house years and years and years and years later. And now even changing her passion from being a neurosurgeon, going through school, wanting to be that in school, and now has pushed through and is developing the same medical device that her grandfather developed way back when. So cool to hear this story. And we're even going to talk about the startup business part of it, the investing part of it. And we're going to touch a little bit on real estate too. So please welcome Antonella Sturniolo to the show. Antonella, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your time. I know you're super busy. So just let's jump right into it. What do you say?
Yeah, no, it's really nice to continue our conversation. As I was saying, when we first met, we had a great conversation. So I'm excited to be able to share with your followers and anyone who may tune in to this episode. So, yeah.
I loved about our conversation is just learning a little bit about your story. It's so cool, like picking up on something that your grandfather had started and your passion aligning and now producing, this value for patients, as you're going. So it's so cool to see that in the family, the history, finding this stuff. So you're going to tell the story way better than I am. So let's tell the listener just a little bit about you, Antonella, and how you started in medicine and where you're at now.
Yeah. So just for complete transparency, I'm not an MD or physician, but I do have a background in public health. And my journey started, I guess I was always interested in medicine. I did want to become a neurosurgeon, and I think I was prompted to get into the medical space because my mother, when I was 4 years old, was diagnosed with melanoma. And this is something that my grandfather had, his mother had. And as a 4-year-old, I have an older sister, and my mom would come home from her appointments and she would have like stitches on her back. And my sister and my father, they didn't want to look at it. They were really freaked out by the exposure of, skin and blood and everything. And I was like, well, I'll take a look. I'll clean it. I'll help you. And so that's where this whole interest in health stemmed from, and it continued. I would say when I started college, I was still dabbling in the idea of going to medical school, but then grew more interested in public health. So how do we actually, create preventative measures in the health space before, let's say, reaching a disease phase or like needing to go to the hospital or see a doctor. I also grew more interested in health technology and medical devices. So that stemmed also from wanting to learn about my grandfather, who I never met. He was an OB-GYN from Brazil. He came over to New York to open his private practice. And he was also on faculty at, some of the hospitals in New York City, like Beth Israel Hospital, Cornell, all the big ones. And he was super ahead of his time, thinking about electric vehicles in the 70s and vaccines that we still don't even have really tied down yet, like herpes vaccines. And he also invented one of the first intrauterine devices, or IUDs, and it was used globally. The difference with his device was that it was non-hormonal and non-copper. So most devices or contraceptives that we have on the market today have hormone or copper or any type of metallic elements added to them, and his didn't. And I think what spoke to me was that his patient. So my grandmother is 100, and she's still alive, still healthy, and his patients keep in touch with our family, and they cook for her, they call her. Similar with, they check in with my mom as well. And I grew super interested in his impact, and the fact that his impact is still alive. And I remember just going down to my grandmother's basement after hearing about his studies still being around in her house or, in her space. And I wanted to see them. So I went into his basement, into her basement, and found, an old filing cabinet, had stacks of clinical studies, like hundreds of pages, newspaper clippings, articles, and about 1,000 of his old IUDs still, in their packaging. They don't even really look old, honestly. I think they've just been preserved pretty well. And I thought it was just going to be research, and a way to connect with my roots. And, I started writing some papers on what it would mean to create, or I guess recreate, this category of contraceptives for women and people all over the world who may have that unmet need or not really resonate with what's currently available on the market. So the more I researched, the more I gave some talks. I had people come up to me and really, they opened up and they shared their stories about how they can't use what's on the market, or they don't, like what's on the market. And, let me know when you're doing clinical studies. So that's when it pivoted to it just being research to actually thinking that this could be a reality again. And I met a really wonderful mechanical engineer, and he's been in the space for a very long time. And we looked at the old device. We looked at ways that we could improve upon it. So the old device and the new one is in a Y shape. So it actually fits up by the fallopian tubes, versus the IUDs that are currently on the market are mostly T-shaped. And so we basically expanded upon the Y shape, like raising the web, covering more uterine surface area, and then repatented our ideas and are getting ready to raise and expand and grow, and hopefully, can bring this back to the market.
That's awesome. And you tell me that story, it's like my mind, it's like I see you going down to the basement, and I jump back into a movie called The Cobbler. Have you seen that?
I haven't.
It's a dumb, funny movie. It's Adam Sandler. But anyway, he comes from a long line of cobblers, right? Shoemakers, right? And there's this machine down in his basement of the shoe shop in New York City. And it's funny that the plot of the movie was whenever he sews somebody's shoes with the soles of these shoes, he gets the chance to become that person.
Oh.
But you're telling your story like going down into the basement. It's like I go back into this movie. Let's say, okay, what is it like? That's crazy. But you're literally stepping back into your grandfather's life through his studies, and that connection of passion is so cool. And then bringing that forward. So I'm interested in this relationship. You said the mechanical engineer piece, it seems like a big piece of this turn for you, like somebody who has the experience in basically taking idea to paper, creating that real world product from paper,
Hmm.
and then the patent stuff. I mean, there's so much. How did that relationship come about? Not specifically the person, but if somebody's out there listening and they have these opportunities or these ideas, and then you know taking taking on that risk of stepping out and working with somebody. Tell us a little bit about how that relationship, like where you found this person, and how did that relationship build from there?
Yeah, so I started the research part about 8 years ago now, but I only met my engineer in 2018, I think. Yeah, 2018. Um, and it was mostly just like seeing, I think it's, really important to see. So I was at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, and I met him through some colleagues there. And we just clicked on the fact that he had built really cool devices in the past that are used either in operating rooms or he did some design for the relief band, which is like an anti-nausea bracelet, which I used, and I was sort of like the tester, and it works. So I was like, okay, this guy has drive. He clearly, knows what he's doing, and we just flowed well together. Um, that's not always the case. I think, I did some trial and error, um, had some trial and error learnings along the way, in terms of who to work with. And, um, you know, being young and starting a company, definitely had pros and cons. And I would say like the con is obviously not having a lot of experience in the space, which in a sense, like for startups, isn't really age based in a way, because I think to have a successful or start a successful company, it's like, there's no uh, range that really fits into, per se. But um, yeah, I think just learning about him and just doing a trial approach, like just seeing his ideas on the device before actually, committing and deciding to work together, were key. And then moving forward, I mean, I'm planning to look for other people to bring onto the team. And the approach that I have now is so much different than, let's say, 8 years ago when I started this research. And I have like a more concrete checklist of the types of qualities that you would look for in an individual, especially in the women's health space. So
Yeah. It's got to be challenging. And then building this relationship. I mean, you got to have some reservations. For me, I'm bad because Antonella, I feel like I trust people right out of the gate, and I give you
yeah,
everything right out of the gate. And I'm an optimist. So it's like these things combined when I go out to set out to work with people, sometimes it's not the best way to go. Because I and then I'm full force. Like I'll start working. Okay, let's go. Come on, everybody. Let's go.
yeah,
We're moving. And then you week to week, 2 months, 6 months later, you're like, where is everybody here?
right.
Why is this not moving? So tell us a little bit. Did you have any reservations when you thought of this, reaching out and then expanding? Because what is the name of your company?
Upsilon Healthcare Technology.
Upsilon. Very
The
cool.
name
So
may change in the future, but that's what we're working with now.
perfect. And that's the life of an entrepreneur as a startup, that's all part of the process.
But the IUD is Upsilon, and that will remain because
Right.
the historical device was Ypsilon with a Y. And
Okay.
so we changed it
Because of the shape.
because of the shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the U's not too far off. So
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. So a little bit about, because did you have the company built before you met the engineer, or was that did it kind of coincide with that
it
relationship?
coincided. It was sort of like it was at the same time. And I did it mostly because he really made it a reality as well. And, I couldn't build the device by myself or have those outlets. I come from a health background. So I needed more of those technical skills. Yeah.
Did you have any reservations taking
Um,
that step?
Not really when I started, which is also like, I guess the beauty, but also obliviousness of being young.
Hmm.
When you start a project like this, it's just, optimism, right? And I guess blind faith in a way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can just say I like learned a lot from other people that ended up not being a good fit for the company, and just how to navigate those waters too. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
but at first I have more reservations now than I did 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
I think that's
Yeah.
part of that experience piece too, moving along as you're gaining experience and building your business, you're building your, I guess, the emotional intelligence as well
Mhm.
too, as a manager, as a owner, and understanding what that looks like. And then you also have equity in this idea too. Your grandfather had equity in it, definitely, Antonella, but as you put time into it, you're building that equity in there, because of the value that you're placing into that product. So it's very cool. What so far in your um, journey developing this idea, this IUD, right?
Mhm.
And maybe even the company. Do you have any suggestions that were kind of like takeaways for you so far in the journey that may be helpful for the listeners?
Um, I would say the biggest one is really taking time to figure out who you want to work with and how to build your network in this space. Um, it's in a sense, I find like searching for the right person can be a full-time job in itself, but it's extremely worth it in the end because it'll save a lot of headaches and um, company structural shifting that you may need to do, or any legal implications that can come along with it. I would say that's the biggest one that I have, making sure that you really flow well with your team, and that the people that are working with you are coming to work with you with their experiences that are, that will contribute greatly to the project. Because it's not fun to bring someone in and then have to like drag them along, or um, realize that you made a mistake. So also like having the legal protections, whether that's a proper vesting schedule, or maybe like do a trial run first when you're starting out with bringing people on board, because that will also save some headaches
Yeah.
in the future. Yeah.
And being that this is the real estate mogul, MD, we
Yeah.
oftentimes talk about investing in real estate, but we also talk about the entrepreneur piece of this. And what I'm hearing there, when you say, okay, network is important, and kind of establishing or being intentional about that network. And then I heard you talk about legal structures, legal challenges. That's kind of like in real estate, legal is a piece of our network as well too. For this would be different for everybody, but what would your network look like for a medical device per se, generally speaking?
Yeah, it's pretty vast. I mean, you need the MD. So I have an MPH. So it's anywhere from, the more strictly clinical side, whether it's surgeons, OB-GYNs, anyone who can potentially use or insert the IUD, but also, just general medical advice is always much appreciated for us. Then public health professionals, and looking at what policies have shifted in the women's health space over time. There's a lot going on currently. Um, and then uh, product development people, and product designers, and regulatory consultants and strategists, to look at, like, on the FDA side of, clinical studies and design, and what's needed there. Engineers, so mechanical mostly. We don't really need software engineers, but yeah, how to actually build the device, and trying to find the right manufacturers and suppliers and people that can do, let's say, our biocompatibility tests, and making sure like all the materials are correct. And I also just like to keep a general network of students. I think they've been super helpful. At Hopkins, where I did my MPH, you have to do a practicum. And so that's like, anywhere from, it's around 100 hours of really dedicated work in the health space. And we've had about, I don't know, probably 30 students working with us over time from different backgrounds. Some have MDs or nurses or data analysts. So they've been extremely helpful in the space too. And so it's always good to keep your network open for students too.
Absolutely. And that piece you said, vesting schedule. So it makes me, I'm always curious on startups, going from, whether it's bootstrap, still is bootstrap, creating the MVP, the minimal viable product, and like getting this thing out. There's so much that goes around this when it comes to investing. In your experience, did you start bootstrapping? Did you raise capital? Like, tell us just generally speaking, what was the path for you in your startup?
Yeah, so we're getting ready to hopefully raise soon, in terms of like more like a pre-seed, because we need to conduct our biocompatibility studies, so that it's basically all like pre-submission for FDA clinical studies. And so what we've put in so far is mostly just like friends and family and internal board, I guess, or employee funding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to keep it as lean as possible too, while scaling up. But what was the other part to your question?
No, that's great. That's a great question.
Yeah. Oh,
Getting
okay.
into it. A great answer. Sorry. And then when you're doing that, like friends and family, employee type stuff, has that been debt capital or has that been equity position?
Mostly equity. Yeah.
Mostly equity. Interesting. Interesting. That's a whole nother
It'll
piece
shift
of,
though. As you grow, it will shift. Yeah.
yeah. So that's a whole nother piece, as well too, like a different side, of the business side, the finance piece of it. It's very, very interesting. Um, what about, oh, that's another add to your network too. Like capital raise is going to be a whole nother piece of the
Yeah,
network,
I
huh?
forgot to mention just like general, you know, people who have a lot of business experience. That's another part of the
Yeah.
network.
If somebody handed you their resume and was like, I just have general business, like that's what I do. I know you're looking for it. Would that put a smile on your face? Come
Yeah,
on.
exactly.
Oh, that's so much fun. So with all of this going on, I'm not a financial consultant, but I always hear, consultants saying, hey, if you have that business and you have the ability to invest in your business, that's a great play. Given that you're making the right steps and doing things right, because then you're building that multiple of your
Mm.
business. So there's as a return on your investment, that's massive. But there are other things out there that we invest in, real estate, obviously being one of those. So I just want to touch with you and your path so far. You're focused on the business, and that is a great focus. Where is it at in your mind, Antonella? Like other sources or different types of assets to invest in? Has that been a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think my two main, I guess, focuses for where I've put funding or money have been obviously Upsilon. And then another one is my closest cousin bought a bunch of real estate in Detroit. And it ranges from, he bought this huge warehouse, he bought a restaurant, a cafe, etc. And I decided a few years ago to put money into that. And I think, real estate is one of the best investments you can make, especially just, it's like once you have it, it's yours. There's no expiration date on it, which is really, I think, special. And the risk of losing it is a lot, it's safer than most, online or um, financial, I guess, platform investments. So,
Yes. So
yeah.
great. So you are investing in real estate. I remember talking with you
Yeah.
about that venture in Detroit and basically redeveloping space, if I
Mm.
remember right, and you were able to invest in that. And I believe that you are equity partners in those, or you debt loans?
No, I just gave him some initial funding, which will pay out over time. You get like a percentage back every year
Yeah. Okay.
over
Kind of
time.
like a debt loan kind of thing. Yeah, very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But
So,
definitely worth it. Once the timeline's up, I think,
yeah,
turnover is worth the, insertion of finances or funding
yeah.
in early stage. Yeah.
Awesome. So just keeping that spark going for you too, and considering that, keeping Upsilon as part of that main, because that multiple that you're developing. But then also there's the Y bucket, I think that is not monetary. So that the goodness that you get from helping people and
Hmm.
providing the solution, that not a lot of other people could do this, right?
Yeah.
So there's so much of that that doesn't go on a financial statement. That's part of that company, that passion as well too. But keeping that focus on real estate, because that can always be a piece of the network as well too. As you're networking for Upsilon, guess what? A lot of those people will probably be in the real estate world too, especially when you're doing capital raise stuff. So I would just encourage you, not that you're asking for any advice, but just thinking
Go
about it
ahead. Yeah.
while you are doing this, always keep that in the back of your mind, because it is amazing the opportunities that you're around, that we are around, that we don't even know we're around them.
Mhm.
So if you say, okay, real estate is a great, which I agree with you, is a great investment. The risk mitigation is amazing, because, like you say, nobody can take that from you. You got to structure the deals properly. We use insurance. There's ways that it's a real tangible asset. It's
Mhm.
not like a Bitcoin that can
Can't
go wrong.
disappear like that. Yeah.
Right, right. But these networks that you're building, conversations that you're having, you never know when that next one will be. Hey, I've got this opportunity here. Somebody says, "Hey, my cousin's buying over here, and they've done, 4 or 5 properties, and they've gone full cycle, and we're actually raising capital. You want to learn about that." So there's these opportunities, but it's got to be that seed planted in your head. So as
Yeah.
you're networking, like your whole life can be based around these opportunities, which just basically starts with conversation, just
Hmm.
like how it started probably with a mechanical engineer. It's
Yeah.
probably a conversation.
Exactly. And also just recognizing, like for me, I was like, oh, well, this money is just sitting here anyway. I might as well put it to good use. And, um, I wasn't using it at the time and had no real intention of using it anytime soon. So why not,
Yeah,
put it into something?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and that's
And
great. And
it's also like this, I'm really grateful that, my grandparents and like my mom um, also invested in real estate in some capacity, because there's just this level of, it just makes you feel a lot more secure. And um, I don't know, I feel like in this time and age and what's going on in the world, it's nice to feel like something at least is secure and that you have a little bit of control over. But
yeah,
yeah.
that could be a whole nother
Yeah,
show and
that's a
stuff, talking about that stuff. Well, that's interesting. So your family has experience in real estate investing as well too.
yeah, yeah.
Just generally speaking, not diving into the nuts and bolts on it, but what did that look like for your parents, as far as what type of investments and structures?
Um, I'm not sure about the details, but I know like my grandfather, who of course was on the ball back in the day, was buying houses and apartments and actually insured. So he had melanoma, as I was saying before, and before he passed away, he ensured that my mom had an apartment in New York, which she still has. So it's like, and this was right before he passed away. So he was just like, thinking ahead and how, if he wasn't going to be here, how can he at least provide some sort of um, support? And yeah, something that
Beautiful.
sort of, he's not here, but it sort of lives on through the spaces that he had purchased and created. So
You said he was from Brazil, correct?
yeah.
So
Hmm.
do you think that that choice for him was a culture piece, or do you think it was taking care of family as the culture piece, or do you think maybe it was because maybe he didn't have that and he had to work, so therefore he was going to provide for his family?
No, he came from a really supportive family. I found like letters that he had written to his mother, um, and it's like so poetic, and just the level of love he had for his family was really high and really beautiful. Um, so I think it was more just like continuing that love
Yeah,
and care for your family members. And he was very close with my mom, so
awesome.
yeah.
So definitely a culture piece, the family
Mhm.
family culture piece. Do you speak Spanish? Or no, they
Um, I
Portuguese.
I speak Portuguese and
Wow.
Spanish
Wow, that's awesome.
and some
So
German.
cool.
But
So, and you said he wrote very poetically and it was beautiful and made me think, okay, was it English? No.
he wrote in Portuguese. Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
and
so
some
cool.
English, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. English, no, don't get me wrong. English is a beautiful language. And I'm,
it's different.
yeah,
It's different than like a
yeah.
romantic. Yeah.
So if we were to look back, say, wow, 15 years for you, Antonella, and yeah, yeah, 15 years.
Yeah. I
So,
was not doing anything close to. I was in school. Yeah.
yep, yep. So at that point, and you sat beside somebody who may have been on a similar path, which was, yeah, I'll help you take care of that. Yeah, I can deal with this right around that time, right? You were, because you said you neurosurgeon is what you're thinking of.
I wanted to. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe somebody in that path, maybe there's, a physician maybe with a child or something, or even in med school. If you were to sit beside somebody who had that same passion or drive and goals that you had then,
Hmm.
what was something that you would tell that person?
Would they be the same age as me, or already, let's say, a neurosurgeon just sitting next to me?
Say somebody in school, so same age as you,
Okay.
early on, drive pushing for that thought of becoming a surgeon, a neurosurgeon.
I mean, I wasn't super stuck on the idea, which I think is a little telling. I think I would tell the person to keep their options open, because you sort of never know what may change, or your interests. I think it's healthy for your interests to change over time. Um, and for me, it's like I always approach projects and work with creative approaches. And so I think it's like similar for life path, right? Like just um, treating your life as like this one big creative bubble, and um, just sort of flowing with whatever comes your way, but also, making sure that you're reaching your goals, and upholding your passions, and making sure um, that you're staying on your path. But yeah, I would just say like openness is a big thing to keep in mind, especially when you're super young.
Yeah, so cool, so cool. And then what's one thing that you've learned along this journey of whether it's shifting, having that open mind and shifting that direction, or since you've been building your business and developing this product, this medical device, like what's the biggest thing that you've learned so far?
The biggest thing, well, apart from choosing the right people to work with, I
How
think
about
is
this?
patience.
What's it?
I
Patience?
think I think is patience. Yeah. Because I'm a very like go get 'em type of worker. And I'm very driven, and I like to have things happen, I think, at a faster rate than in reality sometimes they're able to. So yeah, patience, especially in the medical device industry. Takes a
How
long
about your biggest mistake?
time. Biggest mistake was probably picking some people initially to work with that weren't the best fit, because I wasn't patient enough, and because I guess I didn't. believe in myself enough to think that I could sort of do it on my own. Yeah.
Were you able to realize that quickly and remove them, or did it kind of like hang around and make the problem worse?
It definitely hung around. I think it was also because like where I am now, I'm so much more secure in the way that I see myself and my motivation for this project, but also for impacting the health space in general. And I just didn't have that, almost 10 years ago, even. Um, I did in terms of general work ethic, but not for like startups. I was like, I need help, or I can't do this by myself. And um, yeah, I think it's just changed a lot over time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I always say the difference between need and want, and understanding when you're in a position of need, I need somebody to work with me. I need somebody to help me, as opposed to I want somebody to work with me. I want somebody to help me is a
Right.
huge thing. And then once you do realize that you've made a mistake when it comes to expanding your team, the best thing you can do is remove that person.
Hmm.
I'm definitely not the one who created this, but to hire slow and fire fast
Hmm.
is the biggest thing. It's like a bad person in the team is like a cancer, and
Yeah.
it's contagious
And
too.
I did the opposite. So that
Yeah,
I think
but
was
we learn, Antonella. It's that's what we do. So it's great. Well, thank you so much for your story. Absolute pleasure. And if the listeners want to reach out to you, maybe learn a little bit more about Upsilon, or a little more about your story, your passion, or even, hey, expanding that network, and tell us a little bit more about the capital raise when it's
yeah.
time. Other physicians maybe would like to work with you. They can find you on LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
it's your name, Antonella Sterniolo. How did I do?
Got it.
Come
You got it.
on, come on.
Perfect.
And
No
that's
problem.
ANTONELLASTURNIOLO.
Yes,
So
it's one big pasta. Like,
yeah, the big pasta, the big pasta. So
yes.
yeah,
And you can
yeah,
find me. So it's the same for like Instagram. I'm working on a website as well, and um, working on shifting the Upsilon website. But you can find us on either even Googling just the Upsilon IUD, it will come up. And the website's uht.com.co right now. So
perfect.
yeah,
And if we do have updates before we publish the episode, we'll definitely
yeah.
drop it in the description. We'll have the link to your uh, social medias in the description as well too. So thank you again, Antonella. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you so
time.
much. It's
And to the
great to.
listeners out there today, thank you so much for your time. And like I said, like I always say, thank you for your attention, because the attention is the most valuable piece of our time. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know. Info@physicianwellsystems.com. And until next time, this is Real Estate Mogul MD.